Hello, Professor Bloxham, or whoever might be watching this. This is my money and banking presentation. So I was looking at Wall Street Journal. I was finding what I was going to do this presentation on. And I found a couple of topics that I didn't really understand, and then a couple ones I just didn't think would really be enjoyable to talk about. So I'm kind of doing this for your sake as well. And then I kind of found one that was going to meet in the middle. So the topic that I chose to do, and the article that I'm doing it on, is the Wall Street Journal survey. Economists split on causes of hiring slowdown. This is an article by Harriet Torrey. So as you might have seen if you're paying attention to the news, is that companies are hiring people at a much slower rate than they're used to doing. This is for a couple of reasons, which I'll dive into in a little bit. But essentially, economists are kind of split on the reasons why companies are doing this. So let's dive into it a little bit. Let me give you just a quick overview of the type of things that they're exactly split on. So economists are split on whether the recent hiring slowdown reflects primarily a shortage of workers or a softening demand for labor. So let's just kind of take these one by one. The first one, reflecting a shortage of workers. This just means that the companies don't necessarily have the people and the bodies that want to come work for the companies. And this could be a variety of reasons, whether it's just not being the job that they want to do, not the positions that they ultimately feel that they should be in, or a variety of reasons along those lines, which we'll dive into in a little bit. Or just the companies don't really need the labor itself. So it's not so much that they don't find the workers to fill the positions, but with technology and a lot of the kind of advancements that are going on in the workplace, the companies just don't necessarily need the workers to fill those positions. So we will get into the exact split in a second. The survey that the article just dove into says that 45.3% of economists blame the slowdown on the tight labor market, and then 37.7% of respondents said the issue was a gradual decrease of a desire to expand payrolls. So that sounds like a lot of words at once, but let me just kind of take it step by step. So when the tight labor market, as I touched on before, just means that there aren't employees that exactly want to go and work for the companies. There wasn't exactly a pinpoint reason of why this is being done. It can be for a variety of reasons, but essentially the positions that are out there, they don't feel as adequate for them, so they're not wanting to apply and ultimately work for those companies and do those jobs. And then the second part of that is the decrease of the desire to expand payroll. So let me just kind of give you an example of this. McDonald's, they've been paying $12, $13 for a really long time, and they're not really seeing an increase in this. So people aren't going to want to either A, waste their time going and working for a job where they're only making $12, $13 an hour, or companies don't want to hire less people and just pay them more. So it's kind of a position where it's up to the companies to take a poll on that. So allow me to kind of expand on what exactly that means. So the first explanation where the economists are split on is the economic expansion can continue at a solid pace if more potential workers can be drawn into the labor force from the sidelines. And no, we're not talking about the basketball or the football sidelines. This just means the people that are at home taking care of the kids, unable to find jobs, drinking beer, playing video games. Who knows what they're doing, but they're not out in the workforce. So one of the first suggestions that they have is that they can do this if more people just went out and took those jobs. And if you go back to my McDonald's analogy a little bit ago, a lot of people don't necessarily want to get out into the workforce if the jobs aren't going to be paying a lot. So they just feel that it's a waste of their time. They just don't want to do so. Oh, let me go back. So I found a quotation from the article that will really kind of emphasize this point. What the article says is manufacturers have consistently cited an inability to find talent as a top concern, with some suggesting that a lack of sufficient workers has held back growth. This was said by economist Chad Moutre of the National Association of Manufacturers, kind of fitting to the quote. At the same time, hiring has weakened lately, primarily due to global headwinds and ongoing trade uncertainties. So one thing that I was personally a little confused about when reading this article is how the trade uncertainties affect the slowing down of the companies hiring these workers. That wasn't something that I could really find a correlation to, and they didn't really state that clearly in the article. So let's take the first part kind of step by step. So when they say that they're unable to find adequate talent, I can relate this back to a couple summers ago when I worked at this large manufacturing plant called Kodama. Excuse me. And what I found was the workers in the factory, they weren't just people that they could pick up off the street or just people coming right out of college. These people had experience and they had education in that specific field because these were multi-million-dollar machines that were ultimately being operated by. So you couldn't just find your average Joe Schmo and put them in the factory and have them work. So that ultimately leads to companies slowing down their hiring because they can't find people who can actually do the job. Also, with that being said, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, I think that actually concludes that slide, so let's move on. And then there's the other explanation. So the other explanation indicates that employers are becoming more cautious about hiring for various reasons. Some of the examples are the following: because of slower global growth or other uncertainties, or because economists see weakening domestic demand for goods and services, which could portend to a lot of U.S. economic momentum in the months ahead. This is where it gets kind of cool, because not only does this have an impact on the companies that are hiring slower, but the economy as a whole. So with that being said, with technology and other advances that we're having, there's not really a large need for companies to bring on a bunch more workers. A perfect example of this is, I don't know if you're familiar or not, but Walmart recently made a change where what you can do is go on the app or your computer and you can type in your grocery list, and then you can fill it out completely, pick what you want, the types of, candy bars or cereals that you want. I personally like Lucky Charms, but it's kind of a separate story. And then what you do is you just say, hey, I'm on my way, and then you give them a little bit of a notice, and then when you show up to Walmart, they have your cart ready, and they're ready to just put it right in your car, and you pay on the app, and off you go. So this is something that doesn't really require a lot of cashiers or shelf stockers to be there, because the company is able to do it with less workers. So why would someone like Walmart hire more people if ultimately they don't need them? That's just a waste of pay, and also if they're doing it efficiently and effectively already, why change that? And from the consumer's end too, they're going to want that app and the convenience that they have. Because you think about it, it's a lot easier for people to just kind of click some buttons and go and have only one person service them, rather than going in the store, having someone stock the shelves, having someone assist them on the sales floor, and then ultimately checking out to a cashier. It just doesn't really make sense for them to do that, so that could be part of the reasons as well. And this is how it ties into the U.S. economic momentum. So I'll dive into the data in a second, but ultimately, if you think about it, companies flourish when people are buying their goods and services and when there's people working for them. So if there isn't really a high demand for people to go into the retail stores and buy their goods, obviously the companies aren't going to want to hire more people and spend more on payroll when it's not going to do them well enough to do so. So some data that was found in the article, if you see here, it suggests that a recession is more likely to happen than not within the next 12 months, and I will get into that in a second. In a chart titled Declining Downturn Odds, my apologies, it gives us a probability of the U.S. economy being in a recession within the next 12 months. And what I found with this is the probability in 2019 is higher than it's been since ultimately the crisis in 2008, which we kind of all know how that happened. And this kind of makes sense because A, there's not as many people going into the retail stores and buying things, and also there's not enough people filling those jobs. It's got to have some money and some circulation. So why is this important to everyday people like myself, my cameraman, and Professor Bloxham? So employment and unemployment directly affect the economy, and this is because, the more people that are employed, the more people are able to satisfy their financial needs, and they have more money, not less, to make the purchases. So they're able to go to the grocery store, able to buy the cars, buy the shoes, blah, blah, blah. They're able to buy that and have more money in circulation, which ultimately helps the economy. So that is why that is important, and that'll be really interesting to look forward to the next, year, to see if a recession actually is in the near future. The end. I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you.